Simon Cowell's mouth was open. Nothing came out. He sat at the judge's table and looked at the 16-year-old boy at the microphone, and he could not find words. Not one. The mechanism had simply stopped. The boy had just told him something from before the boy existed. And Simon, who had been at that charity event, who had shaken that hand, who had laughed and said done, remembered every word. It was another Tuesday night taping. The Pasadena Civic Auditorium. 3,000 seats, cameras rolling, millions watching from home. Another hopeful contestant stepping into the spotlight. Simon sat at the judge's table in his black shirt, arms crossed, that familiar expression of measured skepticism in place. Howie Mandel was reading something on his phone. Heidi Klum had a cough. Sofia Vergara was mid-laugh with a producer. Another Tuesday. Another audition. Nothing to warn anyone that tonight would leave the most decisive man in television without a single word. The boy who walked out was 16 years old. His name was Marcus Reed. He was broad-shouldered, easy in his movements, the kind of teenager who has decided the nerves aren't in charge tonight. He wore a dark jacket over a plain shirt. He carried a guitar. He set it against the stand before he spoke. He didn't need it yet. He looked at the judges. Then he looked at Simon specifically. Just Simon. Terry Crews came to meet him. "Hey, what's your name?" Marcus told him. "Marcus, how old are you?" 16. "What are you going to do for us today?" "Play guitar and sing," Marcus said. "But first, can I say something about why I'm here?" "Of course," Terry said. He stepped back. He gave him the room. Marcus looked at the judges. At Simon. He took a breath. "My dad died before I was born," he said. Directly, no softening. "He was killed in a construction accident. 3 weeks before I was born. I was born the day after his funeral." He stopped for a moment. "I've never met him. I know him only through my mom." The auditorium settled into silence. "Who are you singing for tonight, Marcus?" Terry asked. "My dad." His name was Colin Reed. He looked at Simon Cowell. Directly and with intention. "I'm here because of a bet he made. A bet he made before I existed. A bet he made with you." Simon's arms uncrossed. Very slowly. "About a month before I was born," Marcus said, "my dad was at a charity fundraiser, the Walk for Music Foundation, March 2009 in Burbank. You were there. He told my mom he got to shake your hand. He said he told you something, that his unborn son was going to be a great musician. He said you looked at him the way people look at every dad who says that about their kid." He paused. "He said he told you he'd bet you on it, $50, and you shook his hand and said done." He reached into his jacket pocket. He unfolded a $50 bill. He placed it carefully on the edge of the stage apron. He stepped back. "He never got to collect," Marcus said. "So I came to pay it, and to show you what the bet was worth." Simon Cowell opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Not a sound. He sat with his hands flat on the table. He looked at the $50 bill. He looked at Marcus Reed. The mechanism that produced words, 20 years of words, daily, on camera, in front of millions of people, had stopped. He remembered that event. The way you remember 100 events, vaguely in fragments. The room, the noise, the long line of hands. But one specific thing came back to him, clearly, suddenly, the way things do when a detail arrives and brings the whole picture with it. A man, young, late 20s, a big, genuine laugh. Who had said his unborn son would be a great musician? Who had said, "Want a bet?" Simon had said, "Done." He had shaken the hand again. He had moved on. He had not thought about it since. Howie Mandel put his phone face down. Heidi Klum set her coffee down slowly. Sofa Vergara went still beside the producer, who was still trying to understand what had just happened. 3,000 people in their seats. Not a sound. Nobody moved. Nobody even seemed to breathe. Simon could not speak. He stood. He walked around the judge's table. He crossed onto the stage floor. The first time in 15 seasons, he stopped in front of Marcus Reed. He looked at the $50 bill. He looked at the boy. "Your father," Simon said. His voice came back from somewhere, rough somewhere far from its usual register. Big laugh. Standing near the back of the room. He had something in his jacket pocket. A photograph. "My ultrasound," Marcus said. He carried it everywhere that month. Simon reached down. He picked up the $50 bill. He held it in both hands. "I remember him," Simon said. "To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened 17 years earlier." Colin Reed was 29 years old in March of 2009. He was a construction foreman. He was 3 weeks away from becoming a father for the first time. He and his wife Marie had known for months they were having a boy. The name was already decided. Marcus, Colin could not play an instrument, could barely hold a note. He had never tried to be a musician and never wanted to be. But he had grown up in a house full of music. His mother's records, his sister's piano practice every evening. Sunday mornings with the radio filling the kitchen. Music was how he understood the world. He believed it was the most honest thing a person could do. He believed his son would feel the same way. He had no evidence for this. He just believed it. He attended the Walk for Music Foundation fundraiser that March because Marie had bought the tickets months earlier, before the pregnancy. When they still thought they could go to fundraisers, he almost didn't go. The third trimester was hard, and he'd been working extra shifts. Marie said, "Go, take a night. Be somewhere that isn't a construction site or a hospital appointment." So, he went alone. He ate the food. He shook some hands. He found himself toward the back of the room, slightly out of his element among people who knew each other. Then Simon Cowell came by, working the room the way television personalities do at charity events. A loop, a handshake, 30 seconds of attention at a time. Colin Reed stuck out his hand. He had never been intimidated by anyone in his life. He said, "My son's going to stand on your stage someday." Simon stopped. He looked at this man. He glanced at the jacket pocket, at the corner of a small photograph visible above the breast pocket seam. "Is that a scan?" Simon asked. "That's Marcus," Colin said. 3 weeks out, give or take. Simon laughed. A real one, not a courtesy laugh. He said, "Let me guess, he's going to be a great musician." "The greatest," Colin said, with the absolute certainty of a man who has already decided. "Want to bet?" Simon looked at him for a moment. He held out his hand. "Done," he said. 2 syllables, 1 handshake. That was all. They shook. Colin laughed again. Simon moved on to the next guest. He didn't write it down. He didn't tell anyone. He thought about it on the drive home. The man with the scan photo, the big laugh, the dead certainty about his unborn son. And then he stopped thinking about it. Moved on to everything else that was always happening. 3 weeks and 4 days later, Colin Reed was on a construction site at 6 in the morning. A section of scaffolding had been improperly secured by a subcontractor who had cut a corner on a deadline. Colin was in the wrong place when it failed. He did not survive. He was 29 years old. He was 3 weeks from becoming a father. Marie went into labor the following day. Marcus Reed was born on the morning of Colin's funeral. He has never been in the same room as his father. He has never heard his voice. He has never known what it felt like to be held by the man who carried his ultrasound photo to a charity event, who bet $50 on his future. Marie told Marcus the story when he was 12 years old. All of it. The charity event, the handshake, the bet. She told it to him because she thought he was old enough to carry it without being crushed by it. She had kept it for 12 years because it was the truest story she knew about who Colin Reed had been. A man who carried his unborn son in his pocket and bet a stranger that the boy would be great. Marcus had played guitar since he was 7. He played the way some people breathe necessarily, without thinking too much about the fact that he was doing it. When Marie told him the story, he sat with it for a long time without speaking. Then he said, "I'm going to win," his bet. He had waited 4 years to be old enough to apply. Simon had not thought about that handshake in 17 years. He had moved through thousands of events, thousands of hands, thousands of moments. He had thought about that night exactly 0 times. None. He had thought it was nothing. Just a man. Just a dream. Just a party. Until tonight. Until a boy placed a $50 bill on the edge of a stage and said, "My father won this bet. He just didn't live to collect." Now Simon stood on the stage floor in front of Marcus Reed and held a folded $50 bill and knew exactly what it had cost. "Your father won," Simon said. His voice was not steady, and he was not trying to make it steady. "He won it before I ever knew the result." Marcus looked at him. His jaw was set. He was working hard. 16 years old and the steadiest person in the room. "He knew," Marcus said. "My mom said he talked about me like I was already real, like I was someone he already knew." "He did," Simon said. "I've shaken a great many hands at a great many events. I remember his. Because he wasn't hopeful. He was certain." He paused. He looked at the bill. "He carried you in his pocket." And Simon Cowell, who had not cried on camera in 20 years at that table, stood on a stage floor. He pressed both hands against his chest and let the cameras see what 17 years of a bet finally coming due looked like. He was crying, not performing it, not managing it, just in it. Fully, Howie Mandel had both hands over his face. Heidi Klum was crying and not attempting to stop. Sofia Vergara pressed her hand to her mouth and held it there. 3,000 people on their feet. All of them, before Marcus had played a single note. Share this story if it moved you. Subscribe so moments like this are never forgotten. Simon stepped forward and put both arms around Marcus Reed. The boy held on. 16 years old. His father's ultrasound in his jacket pocket. His father's bet in his hand. His father's certainty around his shoulders like something inherited. When they stepped apart, Simon held the $50 bill out. "This is yours," he said. Marcus shook his head. "Give it back to the Walk for Music Foundation," he said. "That's where the bet was made." Simon looked at him for a moment. He nodded once. "Play for him," Simon said. Marcus picked up his guitar. He settled it against his body, the way he had done 10,000 times since he was 7. He took one breath. He played. He played a song Colin had loved. A song Marie had described to him once, the way Colin would sing it badly and loudly in the car with the windows down, not caring that he couldn't hold a note. That was how Colin Reed loved music. Entirely, without self-consciousness. Marcus had learned it at 13. He had saved it for this. He played it simply, and he sang it the way it was meant. Not as a performance, but as a delivery. Something owed, and now paid. The auditorium was completely still through every note. When the last note faded, the silence held. One breath. 2, 3. Simon Cowell reached forward without a word. His hand came down on the golden buzzer. Gold confetti poured from the ceiling and fell over Marcus Reed. He looked up at it with his eyes still wet, one hand on his guitar, the other pressed against his jacket pocket, where the ultrasound photo was. In the weeks that followed, Simon returned the $50 bill to the Walk for Music Foundation with a significant additional donation. On the receipt, he wrote in the memo line, in honor of Colin Reed, who was right. He called Marie that Thursday. He told her about the handshake, about the laugh, about the ultrasound visible above the pocket. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, she said he would not have been surprised by any of this. He would have said, "I told you so," and meant every word. Marcus Reed performed 3 more times that season. Before each one, he put the ultrasound photo in his jacket pocket. It was a ritual now, not superstition. Just his father had started something in that pocket, and Marcus intended to keep it there. Some fathers know their children before they have them. Some bets aren't about what might happen. They're about what has already been decided. Colin Reed didn't gamble on a possibility. He shook a stranger's hand and put $50 on something he had already seen.